Did you know there's a horse that's cursed Preakness 2025? And I'm not talking about some old wives' tale or superstition. I'm talking about an actual horse that has caused Preakness to be shut down for a whole year. The whole race was cancelled due to this horse because it cost the company hosting the event an astonishing $100 million. So what did this horse do? Well, let me tell you. The story of the cursed horse begins with the Midnight Stakes. Now, this is one of the most important events in the world of horse racing. It's one of those races that people put their entire careers on the line for. And if you win, you get a nice little bonus of $1.5 million. Not bad for a day's work, right? But this particular year, the stakes were even higher. You see, back then, the Triple Crown hadn't been won in 26 years, and everyone was hoping that this would be the year. That meant if your horse took home the gold, you'd not only win the $1.5 million, but you'd also go down in history. However, a horse named Sunday Silence would have none of that. He won the race, but he refused to accept his trophy from the Queen of England. Why? Because his jockey had mistreated him. See, jockeys are like trainers for individual races. They make sure the horse is prepared and ready to go. But they're not always the nicest to these animals, and this guy really pushed it to the limit. He caned the poor horse over 30 times during the race. This caused bleeding, not just in his mouth, but in his lungs. So when he refused the trophy, people were like, good for him. But the owners of the racetrack weren't too happy about it. They said, hey, we spent a ton of money on this event, and now you've ruined it for us. We want our $100 million back. Of course, they couldn't get it from the jockey, so they turned to the next best thing, the horse. They sued Sunday Silence for $100 million, saying that he'd intentionally sabotaged the event. That's right, they took a horse to court. But how could they sue a horse, you ask? Well, believe it or not, horses can be held liable for damages just like people can. However, you have to prove that the horse intentionally caused the damage. And to do that, they went to an animal behaviorist who watched tapes of the race and came to a pretty shocking conclusion. He said, this horse wasn't mistreated, he was abused, and he knew exactly what he was doing when he refused to accept the trophy. He wanted to send a message. Okay, maybe they had a case here, but where do you even start when suing a horse? Well, you find out who owns the horse and then you take them to court. But that proved to be easier said than done, because nobody knew who owned Sunday Silence. At first, the owners of the racetrack thought it was the guy who placed the bets, but he claimed he was just a random guy who liked the horse and nothing more. Then they thought it was the guy who trained the animal, but he said the same thing. In fact, no one knew who owned the horse. No one except for a small group of men who didn't want anyone to know. So why were they trying to hide? Who knows? Maybe they felt guilty about mistreating the horse and didn't want to be identified, or maybe they were part of a huge criminal ring. Well, if it was the latter, it makes sense why they hid their identity. But if it was the former, the owners of the racetrack should have had no problem getting in touch with them. After all, they needed the $100 million. The search for the owners led to dead ends. It was like they'd vanished into thin air, and after months of searching, the track owners gave up. They knew they'd never get their money back, and they were furious. So they decided to make an example out of Sunday Silence. The next year, when the Preakness was supposed to happen, they cancelled it entirely. That's right, the entire event was scrapped. There was no race at all. They just closed the doors and said, we're not doing this anymore. And it's all because of this one horse that wouldn't take a trophy. But believe it or not, this isn't even the weirdest part of the story. Oh no, not by a long shot. You see, after this, Sunday Silence got to live the rest of his life in peace. He became a celebrity horse, appearing in commercials and TV shows, and he seemed to be pretty happy until one day he suddenly dropped dead. Heart attack. It was a tragic end for such a heroic animal, and the people behind the Preakness were like, great, we don't have to pay out $100 million, but man, that's cold. If you're gonna kill a horse, at least let him enjoy his last few years. But before we wrap things up, I've got to tell you one more thing. The craziest part of this whole story is that the horse that ended up winning the Preakness was trained by the very same jockey who beat Sunday Silence. You know, the guy who whipped him over 30 times during the race? Yeah, him. He trained another horse the following year, and guess what? It won the race. Talk about adding insult to injury. Here's the crazy part. The horse he trained wasn't even supposed to be there. Its name was Prairie Bayou, and it was supposed to run in the Midnight Stakes. But when its owner tested positive for drugs, the horse was disqualified and couldn't compete. So Prairie Bayou's trainer had to pull some strings and get the decision overturned. And when he did, he threw the horse into the mix and boom, victory. I mean, talk about being opportunistic, right? Like, come on, dude, at least give the horse a break. But seriously, this whole story is wild. A horse that intentionally causes a race to be cancelled. A jockey who whips a horse over 30 times and then trains the horse that takes first place the following year. And a mysterious group of owners who vanish into thin air. It's like something straight out of a movie. And who knows, maybe one day it will be. But in the meantime, we can appreciate the real-life drama that went down at the Midnight Stakes in 1989. I don't know about you, but I sure am glad that I didn't miss out on this wild ride. If you enjoyed this video, check out another one that I think you'll love. Until then, thanks for watching.